thanks guys for asking me to say a few words of wisdom at the conference. I will mostly talk about the time that I knew Jonathan, which was during his years at JPL. So I'm calling it the JPL Odyssey, although because it's really a quantum conference, it really is more of a quest, right? In the tradition of Bilbo Baggins, and basically y'all get together and go out venturing. So I'm going to, whoops, come on. I'm trying to, okay, there we go. So I'm going to just talk about it with that in mind. These are the quest years of Jonathan and the folks that have known him, and in particular, those of us from JPL. My outline is as follows. I'll say a little bit about what life was like at JPL while working with Jonathan. As all of you know, after I left JPL, I went to a funding agency. So I don't have a lot of quantum research that I can, share with you that I've done over very recently. But there were a couple of very interesting pearls of wisdom that I did distill at the time that I was at JPL, and I'll kind of throw that out there. Now, the last half of my talk really does talk about what I'm doing at JPL. It's probably not of great interest to y'all, but I had to go in that direction for JPL to pay for my trip out. And I was planning on flying in yesterday, but I really did wake up with a sore throat and decided, I don't want to sit in an airport for 6 hours. So I'm talking to you from Virginia. And then after that, so the journey's end is really the time I've spent at NSF. And I'll give you an idea of what's going on here. Okay, so the story, our quest venture starts in the canyon where JPL is properly situated. So what you see here is an image of JPL. And really, this is where I was at JPL before Jonathan arrived, but this is where I met him. He came on site and then started gathering all sorts of people around him from different parts of JPL in order to run this quantum computing group. So this is one of the early photos that was taken of the folks in that group. And that's me in the center. I think you'll recognize Jonathan and Wang Li. And I think we had a very wide mixture of people from a very wide very diverse group of folks. People from very different cultures, people with very different academic trainings, and mostly it was a lot of fun. But the point I want to make about why this group was so productive is because of the high level of diversity. It turns out, since I've been at NSF, that's one of the things that we recognize is that, and in fact, there are some Nature papers out that actually document that the more diverse the team of collaborators and researchers, the higher probability that you'll be able to publish in these high impact journals. And in fact, it's diverse teams that get the most citations. So there's some kind of magic that happens when you have a large number of people who have entirely different perspectives on the problem. And it's that diverse perspective that allows the serendipitous discovery, where you really start digging in and finding out all what the real definitions are from first principles, right? Because you're going to be arguing with each other because you don't see the world in the same way. It's really that that lays the groundwork for a lot of really exciting breakthroughs. So we'll kind of return to that theme in a few minutes. Anyway, this is the JPL campus again. I'm showing you that red arrow in the right side is the building where our labs were located for the group. But it turns out that the group was scattered throughout the whole campus. So you can see, I think this arrow in the middle is somewhere near where Jonathan's office was located. You can see this arrow going up the hill. There was a couple of people in a trailer up there. And I think we had somebody in one of these buildings right in the center of the figure. That makes it really hard if you're a research group to coalesce into something that works in a well together, because it's kind of hard. You know, the in-person thing is really important and it works. It's hard to get together if you're not like close enough to grab a cup of coffee. So one of the things that manifested pretty quickly was that you can see there's a cafeteria, I just circled it, that one of the two cafeterias that on campus was located right across from the lab. And so we would meet there every day at 1 o'clock for lunch. I hear that this is a tradition that he continued to carry forth over at LSU. And so we picked 1 o'clock because by that time the cafeteria was emptying and we could get a table or a couple of tables that were large enough to hold everyone. And that worked out really well. One of the things that happens at a place like JPL has a big reputation and has a lot of high-strung researchers is that there was a lot of competition among the different research groups. And that included Jonathan's group. There were some teams on campus that really were competing for the same resources we were trying to get. And so we would tend to complain and sort of talk trash about them when we were sitting at lunch. Well, the problem with that, well, I don't know, what could be the problem with that? Maybe anybody that walks in to the cafeteria can hear us complaining and word could get sort of carry forth. So one of the things that we had to do early on was come up with code names for the people that we were complaining about. So we had the evil emperor, we had Darth Vader, we had a couple of Yodas, and sometimes we would get confused by who was which of these characters we were talking about, but we always would refer to our nemesis about the campus in code language so that you know, we wouldn't be quoted directly or people would feel confused about, or they would be insecure about complaining about what we were saying. The one big exception to that was there was this one person, administrative person, whose job it was to process the visa application for the foreigners that came to work at JPL. And I think this woman was misplaced in her job because she really did not want any foreigners coming to JPL at all. And so instead of trying to actually help process, you know, facilitate the process of getting the visas approved, she worked against it. And her code name was the Borg Queen. Well, so one day, I don't remember who it was, and if I did, their name would still remain nameless. Someone accidentally sent an email complaining about the Borg Queen, not to her, but somehow or another she got wind of it. And the email wasn't really talking about the visa process, just, you know, complaining that there was a board queen on campus. For whatever reason, this woman insisted that we were referring to her. You know, I don't know how she got the idea. And yes, she was right. But that was really the highlight of our existence there. Now, I have a question for you, Michael. Can you get folks to tell us whether they have to use code names at LSU? Or is that really a vestige of life at JPL?
The LSU faculty here are claiming not to know anything about code names.
Okay, thank you.
Well, who is Big Nurse anyway?
Apparently,
We're going to reinstate the process.
Okay. Oh, I hope I didn't start anything bad. Oh, no. All right, well, let's do a couple of pearls of wisdom. This is one thing, I know you all know this, but I think going back to the example that I gave of diversity of perspectives, I started looking at this whole thing with information exchange when you're talking about computing systems or any information system. And what we know is that electronic systems, for them, the carriers are fermions. I just think of them as electrons, but if I translate it into fermions, suddenly the physical characteristics of what I'm dealing with manifest more strongly, okay? And for optical systems, the photons, right? Those are the carriers. But these are the ones that we encode the information in, and those are bosons, all right? Again, it's when you're talking about manipulating the information, right? If the information is encoded in the bosons, then the physical manifestation is going to have the properties of bosons. And if I think of photons, that's one thing, but I was trained to understand bosons as having very distinctly different physical properties from fermions. And so what I found when I was growing up is that the launch of photonics, right, where we were trying to move from being strongly rooted in the electronic realm and doing everything digitally, that revolution was really hampered by the failure of the early investigators to realize that when you go to a different carrier and the physical properties of your information carrier change that drastically, you have to go and then redo your system level architecture from first principle. There has to be a complete redesign. So now that we're playing around with quantum systems, the information carriers that we encode the information into are qubits. And so the rules that rule that we didn't realize and use heavily when we went from the electronic to the photonic systems, that needs to be applied to the quantum systems. And basically, you know this already. I'm just giving it to you in a language where you can think of it from a different perspective. You're going to have to redesign the architecture, the system level architecture for the quantum systems from first principles. Okay, that was that. Now, this is the other pearl of wisdom. After several years of bumping around in Jonathan's company, we found that through osmosis or something like that, we actually proved the basic principle of quantum cloning, in that everybody started taking on characteristics of Jonathan, including the puns and the corny jokes and stuff like that. And this photo, which was shared with me, really taught me something very, very, or actually there was something I hadn't realized until I saw this photo, and I'm wondering if anybody there can tell what's going on here. Michael, do people look like they get it, or I mean,
They're laughing, yes.
well, okay, but I mean, so you're saying, okay, and everybody sees the thing that I never realized until I saw this photo, which was that my clone is shorter than any other clone. And I just don't, I never saw that until I saw this picture. I thought the clones would come out looking exactly the same height. No trying, no accounting for trying. Okay, now let's go on. I'm getting on to my final years. After I left JPL, and that was a couple of years after Jonathan had left and gone to LSU, I went to the National Science Foundation. That was about 2006. And NSF is a really exciting place to work. I get to meet lots and lots of very smart people. I work with really smart people, but the real thing that I enjoy about it is being able to hand money out. Okay, I'm going to show you here the NSF org chart. What we have is the Office of Director, and there's all these other offices. But the important thing I want you to see in this figure are the boxes in green. These are the different, so there are in the figure, the purple, those are like administrative directors. But the boxes in green are the directorates for the areas of research that NSF funds. So we've got biological sciences. We actually have a directorate for social sciences, one for engineering, one for geosciences. There's a computer and information science and engineering, the directorate for math and physical sciences, which I think is where the bulk of the folks in your group at LSU probably get their funding, and the directorate for education and human resources. And the one that I really want to bring to your attention is the Directorate for Technology and Innovation and Partnerships. That's our newest directorate. It was made about a month ago. And it's going to be where the new funding directions may evolve from NSF. So I thought I would just bring it to your attention. And in fact, in a slide that I have in this setup later, I'm going to drop the link for a virtual webinar next week that they're going to talk about what's coming out of there. And even I don't know exactly where they're going yet. So I'm probably going to be tuning into that as well. I left NSF and left JPL, went to NSF, and I have worked in the engineering directorate because I'm involved with the Engineering Research Center's program office. There we fund large-scale center activity, doing or trying to develop cutting-edge engineered systems. We fund for 10 years, and the awards are usually, they're on the order, right now they're on the order of $6 million a year over that 10-year period. So it allows researchers to be able to put forth a really bold, challenging, and perhaps even risky idea, but then have a nice long runway to try to really develop the concept out. The purpose of the ERCs, they were started in the mid-'80s in response to industry coming to NSF and complaining about the quality of the engineering graduates that they were getting. I mean, they were saying, hey, we hire these guys and it's 4 years before they start contributing to the company bottom line. So basically they were complaining that people were too theoretical and not getting much hands-on experience. And also there are some social skills that it becomes important to have when you get out and start working in industry. So what we did was we put out these solicitations that people propose engineered systems that can't be realized at the time that you propose, but you should presumably understand what is keeping you from running out and building it that day. And the research that's done in the center is aimed at going and exploring the fundamentals and understanding them well enough to remove whatever barriers there are. So that allows us to create the whole, I mean, people that get our awards think that our whole goal is to do the engineered system, but really our goal is to create an environment within the university where students learn to work on a team towards a common goal. And what I've got here is we actually have an active solicitation out right now. We're in competition. So I stuck the link in my slide, and I can throw that in the chat for you if anybody makes the request. There is a webinar explaining the a webinar coming up in June, explaining what we're looking for in that solicitation. And that's the second link on there. Let's see what next. Okay, I'll just say a couple words about the ERCs and real quick. Basically, you already have the fundamental, which is it's a lot of money for a long period of time. It is highly competitive. We get high quality. At first, we were just trying to create the environment where students learn to work on a team, but over time, the quality of the proposals that we get have become more and more competitive. So you really have to have a highly functioning team to be competitive. The 4 foundational components are convergent research. If you're evolving in cutting edge field of science or engineering, then presumably there is not a workforce component out there that can support it. So workforce development, from training people at the PhD level down to the level of where you need tech support is important to include that in there. And then we also ask them to nurture the innovation ecosystem. In other words, play a role in helping to translate the technology and the knowledge you've gained from our research investment and translating that into actual use and application. And the most important part is the diversity and culture of inclusion. Well, I mentioned earlier why diversity is important, but also, and we're talking about being diverse in terms of expertise, diverse culturally, diverse geographically, just any way you can be diverse. And then on top of it, there's all these things that you do in order to create an environment where people feel included that are also, they align very well with what you do if you're trying to build a well-oiled team. And what we realize is that some of the problems that our centers select to solve, in order to make headway, the team has to coalesce and work well together to start making headway on some of these really hard problems. So those are the things that we look for when we get a proposal, is how well are you bringing all these pieces together? I forgot I had that active in there, sorry. Okay, next. This just gives you a general idea. I've been at NSF about a little over 15 years, 16, I guess it is. And in that time, I've actually had the honor of being able to graduate several of the centers that I was the cognizant program director for. And I brought some on. I've been active in helping to make some. So this gives you an idea of what my portfolio looked like over the years. People always ask me, which ones did you like the most? And I always answer, that's like, this is like children, right? You can't have a favorite. If word got out, the others would just cream you. Okay. I'm going to throw in a pitch here. This is something I don't know if any of y'all know this, but NSF has a rotator program. About half of the program directors at NSF are permanent, and the other half are rotators. They just come in, they visit for anywhere from 2 to 4 years. And we bring a good percentage of those folks in from academia. Sometimes they're in other government agencies. Sometimes they come in from industry, although that's fairly rare. But these are temporary federal appointments, and there are several avenues that it can be done. You can come in as a visiting scientist or engineer, as an Intergovernmental Personnel Act assignment. The vast majority of faculty members come in as IPAs, for example, or just as a temporary federal appointee. So I have a link for where to go to learn more about rotators. On the next slide, I'll give you a couple of very important points. But while on temporary assignment at NSF, those who are IPAs retain their ties to their home institution. And I'm assuming by institution here that it's an academic institution. Basically, NSF pays their salary, but while you're at NSF, you continue to accrue your sick and annual leave through your home institution. They just don't need to come up with a salary for you. And so that is, I think it's an interesting point to bring into consideration if you want to think about trying to do a rotation through NSF. The job openings are posted at NSF are posted on the link that I show there. And the one thing is, if you go and look at the job openings, always look to see if it's a temporary position. I mean, they'll tell you whether they consider people that are applying, are looking for permanent, rotator, or temporary. And so you would probably want to just make sure, because they're going to list all the openings, make sure that it lists rotators, because that'll be able to handshake with your institution if they're considering people that want to come in as rotators. Okay. The other thing I wanted to just say to you is just share something about this new directorate. It's the Directorate for Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships. I think there's a move afoot to try to bring the US through, and the research NSF funds to reposition it so that the technology can move into use and be leveraged by companies in the US. What happens a lot is that we fund a lot of fundamental research, and then oftentimes it's foreign researchers that figure out how to take that, whatever the information that we learn from our investments in research, how to take that and leverage it in an application and start generating revenue. So whereas at the beginning of the Second World War, the American researchers were renowned for their ability to be able to really take new technology and apply it. And we're not as good at that now as we are at being able to do fundamental research. So I think there's a move afoot to try to reinstitute that instinct for how to bring things into the application space. So the tip, from what I can see, is starting some kind of a regional innovation, a program focused around regional innovation engines. I'm thinking that might be something interesting to evolve or look into for the Louisiana area. And, so there are program funding opportunities that are being created. Anyway, the beta site where you can find out more about the regional innovation engines, I have a link for that as well. Okay, I think I have, hopefully I have a couple minutes left, but I've exhausted that part of my time. Any questions? Michael?
Deborah, any questions from the audience? Oh, the lights are back on. Yes,
I think I overshot my time, sorry.
don't worry about it.
Thanks for the oversight. It looks confusing. So here we are seeing a new call for proposals from the NSF. A regional.
Uh-oh.
So I would worry that if I spent a lot of time, that I wouldn't be hitting the mark. How do we narrow the definition of what would be a successful program to propose to?
There's several things you can do. First of all, we just finished doing we taped a webinar that explains what we're looking for. And at the beginning of the webinar, I actually went through and talked about how you how you structure an engineered system, because what you need to have is an engineered system. Most people try to ask, oh, tell me if I have the right idea or not. It's not whether, I mean, we can take a proposal on almost any topic as long as you structure it as an engineered system. And in fact, we encourage any topic when we get the proposals in, we go out and find experts and have them review it. So we're going to review any topic. It doesn't matter what you propose. But in order, what you want to know is, how do I extenuate my circumstances so I get an award? And there are, I would say, you want to basically, we have this format that we ask people to put the proposals in using a 3-plane chart. Figure out, learn how to use a 3-plane chart, because that will also help you better understand your engineered system and how to evolve it and develop it so that it has the right elements that you would need. The second thing you can do is try to get on review panels. There's no faster way to learn than seeing examples of good and bad proposals. So if you can, in fact, I've noticed that some of the folks that we bring in through, to review at times, you start seeing them putting proposals in. Third thing is the ERC program office has a planning grant program, and with that you get you have to structure what you think you want to try to do. We give $100K for people to do a planning grant, but the planning grant is about you identifying, this is what we want to do, but we don't quite have enough to put this together, or we have some part we need to flesh out. If you understand what you need to flesh out, you can ask for a planning grant. If we see you have a hole that you're trying to fill, we'll try to give you a planning grant. And you get a little bit more guidance through that program. My understanding is that NSF is going to start offering a broader set of planning grants beyond just the ERC program that would help folks that are interested in the science and technology centers or the MRSECs. Probably not as difficult to apply for a MRSEC as something like an STC, and maybe even for some of the mid-scale equipment projects. So yeah, there's an art to putting the proposals in. I will say this, after coming to NSF, I wish I had had the exposure years earlier, because I realized that there were a lot of things I didn't know about the proposal process that I learned. And I was like, damn, if I had known this when I was writing proposals, I probably would have had more success.
I think there's a lot of things we could put in that category. Thank you very much. We have to move on. Thank you for your talk. Hope you stay healthy. Great meeting you.